Shalom. This week's Sedra Tetzaveh. In his work, the Mishnah Torah, Maimonides warned about acting in a phony manner. Pardon me while I read a translation of his work. A person is forbidden to act in a smooth-tongued and luring manner. He should not say one thing outwardly and think otherwise in his heart. Rather, his inner self should be like the self which he shows to the world. What he feels in his heart should be the same as the words on his lips. It is natural to want to show a finer version of oneself to the outside world. It is unbecoming to highlight one's warts and flaws. To be true to oneself and honest to others doesn't require revealing one's errors, but it does necessitate honesty when dealing with other people. This week's Torah reading, Tetzaveh, guides the fine line between acting in an alluring manner and aligning one's inner and outer self. The Torah reading begins with God's command to Moshe, and again I apologize for reading, instruct the Jewish people to bring your clear oil of beaten olives for lighting, for kindling lamps regularly. This was the instruction of how to produce the olive oil for the menorah. It is interesting to note that a number of descriptions given to the olive oil used in the temple menorah. God wrote that it must be clear and beaten. The olive oil would become one of the most famous objects in the temple when only one usable jug was found following the Hashmonaim's successful war against the Greco-Syrians, what we know as the Hanukkah story. Rashi's commentary on this week's Torah reading is helpful in explaining how the olive oil should be produced and the requirements of it being clear and beaten. God wrote that the olive oil should be clear. Rashi explained that this meant without any sediment in it. Rashi went on to explain that olive oil without sediment can be achieved not by straining the olives. So you got to make sure you don't strain them. God also wrote that the olives are beaten. Rashi explained that the olives are pounded in a mortar and not grinded in a mill. This ensures that there's no sediment. After the first drop of oil has left the olives can be brought into the mill and then they can be grinded. The second oil that's obtained by the grinding is unfit for use in the menorah, but is permissible for meal offerings. Since in our Torah reading this week, God wrote that the oil must be beaten for the light and only for the light of the menorah. The olives can be beaten for meal offerings, though. Okay, that's the idea. In researching the need for clear olive oil, I found an article by a man by the name of Addison and Paul Vasson, a University of California Cooperative Extension Farm Advisor and author of the Organic Farm Production Manual, which I'm sure you read as often as I do. And he wrote it in as follows. He said that in order for the oil to retain the highest level of quality, it should be separated from any sediment and water remaining after extraction. That seems to align exactly with what the Psukim are saying and what Rashi is explaining as well. But it leaves one question. If olive oil is much better when clear of sediment, why was clear olive oil required only for the menorah, but not for the meal offerings? If it was actually better without sediment, then it should be a requirement for the meal offerings as well. The menorah's oil and flame it produced was on display throughout the day and night. This wasn't true of the olive oil used in meal offerings. In this latter use, it was merely one ingredient in a product to be consumed. No one saw the olive oil used for the meal offerings. The menorah's oil needed to be free of sediment so that it would look its finest. Both the menorah and the meal offering used olive oil. When shown to the public, a finer olive oil was used in order to show a better image. This concept can instruct on the line, what we talked about in the beginning of this Torah, on the line between being fake and honest. As long as one is using the same character trait, it's okay to quote-unquote dress it up without sediment. If one switches the materials, meaning when one alone uses one set of character traits, but when in public uses a different, that's being fake. That's not dressing it up, right? That's slight improvement around others is natural. More than slight improvement around others, when you change exactly who you are, that's being dishonest, and that's the phoniness that the Rambam warns us against. An amazing lesson from olive oil, sediment, and the offerings and the lighting of the menorah in the temple. Shabbat Shalom.